there was a church in the Massachusetts Conference, a UCC church, that had been dwindling, and it got a new pastor, and she was very much of an environmentalist, and like any good leader, she thought about what are all of our assets,
Hmm.
and it turns out they had in an urban area they had about an acre of land. And she said, "Hey, gang, how about we create a organic garden?"
Mm.
And that little congregation growing that garden and inviting people, regardless of their affiliation with the church, to have their own plot in
Uh-huh.
that garden, it actually grew the congregation
Uh-huh.
because people made the connection between the dirt in their fingernails and the blessing of the gospel on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's one thing I wanted to share in response to your question. And you can imagine various manifestations of that kind of way of connecting with the congregation. The other thing is something that I've emphasized. I don't know when I first came upon this recognition. It was probably around 2008. It might have been before that. And that is it occurred to me. I sort of thought of the Bible as a whole, and I thought how much of the Bible is actually about personal salvation,
Mm.
and how much of the Bible is actually about communal salvation. Hello. And it turns out, so I borrowed from Jim Wallace the idea. He uses this for a different point, but for this point, take two highlighters, and in yellow do the personal salvation, and in pink do the communal salvation, and the ratio will it be 10 times more about communal salvation, 100 times more
Hmm.
about communal salvation, and it when will our theology schools begin to realize that the secular emphasis in America about rugged individualism is not a sacred concept?
Mhm.
The sacred concept is really we are all in this together. Interdependence is what matters. And communal salvation is hopefully where we're headed and what we are called to contribute to give our lives to.
Mm.
Um, so that's my sort of big theological response to your question. And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be wonderful if clergy all over the country were finding various ways every worship service to preach that, Beth?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's so powerful, and it's so foundational to changing our relationship to the
right.
living world. And it's also not even explicitly about the right. It's not like a climate sermon
Right.
to right. It's like
And to just to build on what you just said, Telly, it also changes our relationship to religion itself.
right, right.
Because you're sort of saying to folks, listen, I know the reason you came in the doors may be because, you want to be saved, to use evangelical language about this. But it turns out that what God wants for us is to, and again, this puts it too secularly, but to save the earth,
Hmm.
and to help people make that transition and to recognize that our own soul is somehow caught up in that greater work.